Greetings, everybody. Nick DiVirgilio here at Sweetwater, hanging out via Zoom with Kenny Aronoff at his studio in Los Angeles. I just want to talk about how, this last year and more now has been crazy for all of us musicians.
Yeah.
But you've kept going. You've really kind of achieved quite a lot in this year. What have you done since COVID hit to sort of keep your career going? What'd you do to, because I know a lot of touring got canceled for you, like a lot of us. So what did you do to alleviate all of that?
Well, first of all, I believe in adapting and adjusting. You got and by taking action. I was kind of born that way. But if I step back and look at it, it really does work. You take action by adapting and adjusting. So all these tours, Joe Satriani World Tour, of John Fogerty touring, even stuff with my band Supersonic Blues Machine with Billy Gibbons. All that just shut down. All my speaking gigs, I do some corporate speaking. Yeah. That all got shut down. So I'm like, whoa. So I already had this studio that we're in right now, Uncommon Studios. When as you well know, when the record budgets went, that meant the income went. I mean, when the record sales went,
right,
the budgets went. So I slowly but surely put this studio together. So I was already up and running because I've been doing this for 15 years.
Sure.
Where people would send me files from all over the world. But as soon as the COVID hit, I thought, well, I wonder if people are going to still do this because, finances. It didn't, not at all, man. Music is such a joyful, happy, fun thing that it became the only thing that a lot of people had in their life. So it's affordable to hire me to play drums on their tracks. So, I mean, last night I did 2 Joe Satriani songs. The day before I did 4 from Italy, 1 for a drum book that I'm doing with Hal Leonard, and then like a Led Zeppelin type song, unsigned artist but killer song. Right. And then last week I did 8 other songs. I've kept it going. Now with regard to the speaking business, because I was booked to do a lot of that, to answer your question directly, how I adapted, I did some research, talked to people, and then invested in 2 cameras. I have 4 TV monitors in here. Basically, I can give my my speeches virtually live, just like from this place is where I stand and speak, and there's a camera here, but I have a switcher that can put like my deck up on the screen, and I can go to the drum set by just hitting buttons. And so I record the drums in Pro Tools. That comes from my control room, goes into a mixer, which I bought from Sweetwater. I got this headset from Sweetwater, so it's wireless. And then that goes into the mixer, and then I have backing tracks that go into the mixer. And then from that deck I just showed you that's behind me, I have a video with audio, and that goes into the mixer. And that mixer, you got to tweak it just right, and then it goes into Zoom via an analog converter into digital, analog to digital converter. I didn't know anything about this stuff, and so now I do from the COVID, and situation. So I've learned how to operate all this gear, and I'm in business. I've been in business the whole time.
Yeah. Now a lot of drummers, thankfully, have done that. Drummers, I mean, I'm sure other instruments, guys that play guitar and stuff, have doing it as well. Yeah. But drummers especially, because a lot of teaching online, they've had to learn all of this gear. So how long did it take you? Like how many, was it months to kind of get into where everything was dialed in and you could hear the drums clearly and go back to speaking and learn the ins and outs? How long was that process?
Well, the drumming part was already in place because I'd been building that up over the years. And I have an engineer.
Okay.
I'm not an engineer. And so I had all that tweaked, the recording part.
Okay.
But to get the recording coupled in with this visual thing, wow. It started off small. It didn't take too much. It took longer than that. I'd say in a month I was up and operating, but I didn't have these 4K cameras. I just had a little camera, and I was learning about lighting, and I didn't know anything. I went to Home Depot, got some lights, and it was like fluorescent and light or whatever. It was too bright.
Right.
And then finally, these lights, I have 6 lights hanging up on the walls. I brought in like American Idol Entertainment, a real TV lighting guy. And so I just bought, that took a while. I'd say that took, if you put all your effort into just that, you could get it done in a month.
Right.
But you have to have people there working with you. But if you're doing it on your own, it's a work in progress.
Sure.
So I'd say just to be comfortable, give yourself 6 months, get the equipment in, get to learn how to use it, unless you have a team of people with you, or the in between would be you have people constantly teaching you. But because my life is so complex, I've got the recording part, the speaking part. I've got an audio book I'm doing. I've got all kinds of other businesses. I can't. I'm here probably till 2, sometimes 3 in the morning every night working here. Constantly juggling all kinds of things.
It's amazing, man. Congratulations on keeping it going and the success you keep having. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Really cool stuff.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, question. I think I asked you this before, but. So in this COVID time, have you been playing more or less drums? Because you're doing an awful lot of recording and the touring's gone, but I know that took a lot of with pre-COVID, you did a lot of touring. So more or less drumming now in the way things are going right now?
Well, I would say less because, I play a lot, but with John Fogerty, it's a 2.5-hour sound check. Then it's a 2.5-hour show or 2-hour show. So you're dealing 4.5 hours, 5 hours a day of like hard, aggressive playing. And John would want me to play full volume, full dynamics, full everything in sound check. So in that sense, and then if we're doing 5 shows a week, then with Joe Satriani, now I haven't toured with Joe, but not Joe by himself, but I did the Hendrix Experience tour. He didn't do that long sound checks. We do like a 45-minute, because there were a lot of bands, and we didn't play long. But I hear that Joe, when we go out, we'll do 5-6 shows a night. So I don't know. Some days I'm in here playing. When I'm recording, I could be doing as much as 8 hours, and then I'm preparing. But on a daily basis, I'm not doing 5 hours straight because I've got all these other things going on. But I'll tell you this much, and I shared with you that I have that, what I call this functional practice routine. I have a 30-minute workout that's specific to my needs to make sure I sound great today. So if I need to, I would ideally do that every day, once a day. On tour, I do it sometimes 3 times a day. I do the 30-minute routine in my hotel room. I could do it on my legs, and my hands and legs are moving, or with a practice pad. I can do it before sound check, before the show, and sometimes 3 in the morning, so I wake up warmed up.
It's amazing. And it's cool you don't need a drum kit to do it.
No, you don't. No, you don't. It's basic, it's stick control applied. I'm always using my hands and feet at the same time.
Sure.
Dealing with single stroke rolls, dealing with double bass drums, anything that I feel will make me sound great, or I need to do to sound great. And I devised it first because of what I was needing to do in the John Fogerty tour. And then I started adding other things that applied to other situations.
Sure.
But that's why I call it functional. It's really smart practicing, which is, as a drummer, you got to be able to do single strokes, especially in rock and roll. It's almost all single strokes. And so you want to have that kind of flexibility, but with your feet moving too. Even a simple thing is double bass drum playing 16th note, roll. You got to be able to do that effortlessly.
Sure.
And I'm not a robot, so I'm a human, so I have to practice. That's stuff.
Practice makes perfect, right? We all have to practice. That's good.
I have this thing called RPS. It's called the repetition of any skill is the preparation for success. On drumming, it's obvious. Sports, sure. A pitcher has to do 150 pitches a day. Bam, bam. Oh, here's a great story. Jason Day is a PGA golfer. He won 7 PGA tournaments in 10 months in 2016. And the interviewer, after one of his maybe the 7th one, said, "Man, how'd you do that? 7 in 10 months?" He said, "I practice every day, 6 hours a day, 7 days a week. 2 hours on the putting, 2 hours on the chips, 2 hours on the drives." And then she went, "Well, no, but what's the magic? What did you do?" He says, "I practice 6 hours a day, 7 days a week." There's no secret. It's just It's repetition.
Yeah,
I mean,
if you
that's
put the time in, you'll do it.
you'll get. Yeah, it's that simple.
Well, cool. I'd like to, have you demonstrate some of this practice routine for us in just a couple minutes here.
Yeah.
But I do have a question. Since you've built up this speaking business of yours, for a lot of years now, you've been doing this for quite some time.
Yeah.
So could you tell us, how did you think about starting this thing? When was the inspiration to have a speaking business, especially talking to businesses and corporations? And then has this time that we've been in, where you've had to learn how to adjust, have you learned anything to tie into your speaking engagements, to what you tell the people you're speaking to?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, it started off where when my autobiography, Sex, Drums, Rock and Roll, came out, people, I was doing a lot of interviews, but then I got booked to, I can't remember if that was the first time. Anyway, I started right around then, started to put together a presentation.
Okay.
And somehow it got into, instead of just talking about the book, I would put together a show, which would mean I was playing drums and I was speaking. I had a slideshow, with a computer that went on a big screen, and and I have a little remote here that can switch, to different pictures like that. So
right.
I did that, and what happened was, I just kept developing and developing. And one day I went in, I was excited about it because, 30 years of doing clinics, I was used to talking in front of people.
Sure.
It seemed real natural for me. So then I started to realize it was a business. And I actually went to an NSA meeting, a National Speaking Associating event. It was like a corporate event with 3,000 speakers at this hotel. And I watched all these speakers speak, and it was, some were 15 minutes, real crafted speeches, and I saw that there was this incredible business. And so I learned from that, and I just kept building and building, and there was an agent that I happened to go to this, listen to somebody speak, this scientist, and when I walked in, this agent, who I didn't know, he was a drummer, he went, Kenny Aronoff, what are you doing here? I went, I got invited to see this guy speak. He said, dude, you're a badass drummer. And I said, what do you do? He said, I'm an agent, a speaking agent. So I met with him, and we talked about it. And he basically said, dude, most people think they got something to say, and most people have nothing to say.
Right.
He said, it's just like what they told me when I wrote my book. They said, most people can tell their story in 20 pages. To really write a book, which, by the way, took 4.5 years because I was always on tour and recording, man, to make a story in a book really work is really difficult.
Oh, sure.
It's not just I did this and I did that. It's got to have way more meaning than that. Anyway, same with the speaking business. He sat me down and he explained how this works and what, it's not about you, it's about them, but I have this big rock and roll story, so it's so much about me, but how is it going to be about them? And he basically told me what I needed to do. I did that for 3 years on my own. I would get speaking gigs here and there. I'd hire film crews to film me. I put together a sizzle reel. I went back to him 3 years later, and he looked at what I did, and I got websites. I had a website built, hated it, redid it again. RPS, repetition. I know, Nick, you can totally relate to this because, you're a songwriter, you have your own band. You know what? It's touchdowns, man. You don't get a touchdown every time you get the ball. But you keep your eye on the end zone. You're always, okay, this didn't work. All right, let's reassess and try again. And reassess and try again. Because if you don't do anything, it's like math. 0 equals 0. If you don't do anything, you got nothing. So, you know what? It's not going to necessarily work the first time. So anyway, I kept persevering and kept persevering. And somebody told me, man, in 2 years, you're going to be rocking. 2 years came, I wasn't rocking. He made it. This guy who was the film guy who had been in the business said, oh, man, your story's so great, blah, 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 blah. He says, you're going to be booked so much. It didn't happen. It didn't happen because there were certain ingredients I needed to learn, right. And here it is, 5 years later, and I'm getting booked, but it still is a lot of competition out there. Basically, what am I going to offer you?
Right.
That's what it's about. It's not about me, it's about you. So I have to tell my story, but I have to have meaningful things. And now recently, to finish up the answer to your question is I've added more corporate components where, see, I can talk about me working with the Stones and me, persevering through, all the hardships to be successful, connecting, communicating, collaborating. When I walk into a session, I meet Elton John, I got to connect with him immediately. I got to communicate so that we can then collaborate. It's me about really caring about the other musicians doing a great job. Because just if I do a great drum part, that doesn't mean the song's going to get on the record or even on the radio. I need those guys to do a great part. I have to care about the other musicians, the producer, the artist, the band, the assistant engineer, the engineer, everybody. We have to be great. I want them to be great. I want them to want me to be great, and together we'll be great. Those are things that I learned, and that applies to any corporation or any business. But then I started adding actual examples of their business that I wasn't even aware of. And so you can see how you just keep building this like anything, like drumming. And so that's it took a while. And now I'm doing good.
That's awesome. That's a really cool story. So how much do you like? Is there an equal level? Do you like speaking as much as drumming? Does drumming always your most favorite thing? How do you compare the two at all?
I can compare the two, and they're very similar in some ways. Drumming, I always did drumming and music because it makes me feel good. But as a little kid, as you know, you sat down, you played music, you gravitated toward it because it was the most fun thing to do. Way more fun than homework.
Right. Yeah, way
more fun than sitting in a classroom. We were kids and we didn't know. We just I like that. So you did it. And so then it became, something you could make a living doing. So yeah, my whole point is I love doing it. It makes me feel good mentally, physically, emotionally, and even spiritually. Speaking does the exact same thing. Of course, I get to play also.
Sure.
But speaking, I believe so much in what I'm talking about. It still makes me feel good mentally, physically when I'm playing. But even when I'm talking, I'm feeling energy in me. Emotionally it feels good. I love talking about. I believe in what I'm talking about.
Sure.
And I want people out there to be as excited about what I'm talking about as I am, because when we play drums, we want to feel good, but we're also making the band feel good, which makes us feel even better. But then when you make the audience feel good, it makes you feel better than ever. I mean, and there's this relationship between you and the band and the audience. Same thing with speaking. Now, I'm not saying one over the other. If I had to pick, I'd pick music. But I love speaking because I'm now up front, which is a new component
Sure.
of being up front, and I feel natural up there. I don't, when I'm speaking, I'm looking at a camera. I don't even need to have anybody. I've heard some people talk about they were having a hard time, speaking into a camera during this time because you don't have the feedback from the audience. But it may be because, you might be able to relate to this because we're musicians. You remember, let me ask you this. Do you remember how it used to be all about, oh my God, how am I doing? Oh, you're so aware of the audience. And then all of a sudden, I care about the audience, but I became more, it's like Tom Brady. You focus on you and the team and the audience. They'll be happy if you do a great job and you focus on what you're doing as for yourself and the band.
You bet.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, of course. When you get that gel and the magic happens, the audience feeds off of the excitement you're exuding. So it's
Yes, exactly. So everybody
it's one of the
wins.
Greatest feelings in the world. To have a great gig is an amazing feeling for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and the audience. Look, we have to remember, the audience and the band are all humans.
Of course.
The audience and the speaker are humans. So humans are feeling creatures. So they can look up there and go, oh my God, you see what Nick did? He just looked at the bass player and the bass player went, yeah, uh-huh. And then they did that thing. That thing. How did they know to do that? You know what I mean? So then the audience is they're feeling creatures and they're loving observing you guys interacting.
You bet.
That's heavy, man.
Totally.
So when I speak, when I'm in person, of course I can do the same thing. If I don't see those people, I'm imagining them there anyway. I mean, you know what I mean? I bet you when you're practicing, sometimes you say, okay, I gotta how's this? You're working out your stuff, but then when you're really practicing before you're going to rehearse with the band, or if you're rehearsing with the band, there's no audience, you still can picture an audience there, and you can perform accordingly.
You bet.
Because you've done it a billion times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff, man. Really, really cool. Well, let's do. Why don't we change the scene here for a few minutes here? Why don't you get back behind your drums and show us a little bit of that practice routine, and let's talk drums for a second.
Okay, cool. I'll go over there. All right. So when I play, I'll turn this mic off. Otherwise, it's going to be like John Bonham on steroids. So, all right, so Nick, you know the stick control book.
Of course.
And all right, so what I did was I created a routine based on the first 13 patterns on stick control, except I flip pattern 11 and 12. The reason why is the way it is in the book, 12 would be like left, right, 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 which is 3 rights. And then if you go into line 13, it starts with 4 rights. That means you'd have 7 rights in a row of one hand. So when I flip it, you never have more than four of any hand in a row.
Okay, makes sense.
The reason why, for the viewer, the reason why these lines are so good, the first 2 lines are single strokes, right, left, right, left. Second line is left, right. Duh. That's what we do all day long on the drums. Lines 3 and 4 are double strokes. Right, right, left is 3. Line 4 is left, right is 4. It's just reversing the pattern. Line 5 is the thing they call the paradiddle, which is right, left, right, left, which actually is a summation of lines 1 through 4. Right, left, which is line 1. Right is the beginning of line 3. Left, right is the beginning of line 2. And left is the beginning of line 4. And so that's great. If you just did those 5, it'd be amazing. Then lines 6, 7, and 8 are variations of that paradiddle.
Okay.
They just move the hand stickings around. All right, line 9 through 12 are combinations of 3-stroke patterns. So we went from singles, doubles, now 3. Line 9 is like right, left. Line 10 is left, right. For me, line 11 is right, left. And then finally 13 is quadruples, 4. Right, left. So that's kind of like, that's pretty much most of any patterns you're going to, rarely do you do 4 in a row.
Right.
But, so that's the foundation. Then, what I started realizing, remember I called it functional practicing. I mean, if I'm practicing my hands, I don't have a lot of time in the day. So I want to be warming up my feet too. So I came up with, I'll just narrow it down to 3 basic patterns with my feet. So if you're playing 8th notes with your hands, like, I'll start by playing quarter notes, all 13 patterns with my hands, with my foot playing quarter notes, half the value of your hand. So it'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the sound.
Okay.
Then when I get through the 13 lines, I do the same thing with my left foot. For me, I do it on the bass drum. Everything is the double bass drum because I need as much help as I can get on that. But just for practical purposes, I'll do with that going.
Okay.
By the way, this is heels down. Once again, functional practicing. I practice these 13 patterns with 3 foot patterns with the heels down. Do the same thing again with the heels up. Because as you know, we play most of the time heels. Well, you play heel way up, heel medium, heel down. Depends on what you're doing. What you're trying to do, you know. So then the 3rd foot pattern is now I'm playing 8 notes with my feet, which is the double bass drum roll, which is I need as much help as I can get on that. So I added that as my foot pattern. Once again, functional, smart practicing. So I'll show you, I'll just do the first 5 lines so you get an idea of what I'm doing.
Okay.
I'm going to mute this now. So I'll play the right hand on the tom-tom so you can hear the pattern.
Okay.
All right, so that's the basic idea. Now I'll go through all 13 lines again with my heels up. Now I got into this Molar thing. So I noticed that, when I played marimba, it was when I studied at Indiana University. It was you had to lift. You had to use your wrist because it's a yarn mallet hitting wood. It was muffling it. My teacher was yelling, "Lift, lift, lift!" So really, your strokes were like 1, 2, 1. So I learned how to lift on the marimba. But when I played timpani, I used finger technique because you throw this mallet down to get tone out of. You don't want timpani to sound like like
Totally. Yeah, let the drum breathe. Yeah.
So with the finger, you throw the mallet down, and it's just like a double stroke roll. You let your fingers open up to let the stick just fall off the drum. Then use your fingers to push the stick back down. So with timpani, I learned finger technique. Well, when you play the snare drum, you're using both. Wrist for singles and fingers for the double. When you do a double stroke roll, you throw one down with the wrist, then you let the fingers get out of the way, let the stick come up, and you get the second stroke with the fingers throwing the stick back down. So that was obvious right there. That's basically. But as I started to get into rock and roll more, with an adult brain, when a little kid I was just bashing and playing. But when I started to really examine it, and with John Cougar Mellencamp, I started adding way more power. And so I started to then take the wrist and move it into my arm and then into my upper arm. And then I started really playing, way up. And I'm kind of playing from the core, almost like martial arts or a boxer. They throw their whole body when they are hitting, but it's coming from their gut. Same thing from a golfer. It's not the club is the head of the club is the last thing that hits the ball. Their whole body, entire body, is in one motion coming through, and then finally the head hits the ball. Same with tennis. They spend half their time coming toward the ball. They spend half their time preparing for the next shot. And so with drumming, it's weird because we're not standing up, so you're splitting the body. But whether it's my feet or my hands, I'm thinking core. All right. So I started to come up with an exercise that would at least deal with what we call the Molar Technique, which is using not just your fingers or your wrists. So in a nutshell, part of my warm-up, because this is what I use when I play, is I do this thing called 2s, 3s, 4s, 5, and 6. So the 2s would be you go down. Every time, whatever pattern, group of notes you're doing, whether it's 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, the first one is loud and the rest are kind of like, they kind of come at, you throw this energy, this down, and the rest is rebound. So it'd be like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Same note value. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, I do this with the right hand. I do this with the left hand, which was a real trip. Sure. Learning it left-handed because I'm right-handed, so it's easier. Same foot patterns. Heels down, heels up. I'll just give you an idea of what this sounds like.
Okay.
And so on. You get the idea.
Sure.
So it's 2s, 3s, but man, it's like when you play think about this when you play the hi-hat, when you're playing rock and roll, you're doing this, and I'm always doing this, which is an exaggeration of just this. I just start doing this, and it makes my playing flow, and I play hard, but it's not hard. It's a easy hard because I'm using my body. and it's not just all like my arm. By the way, that prevents injuries when you flow at anything. So those are the basic starting. Now I'll get into a few more things, and then because we could be here for hours, but I told you the single stroke roll is the most important thing. So, and that goes fast. At the level I want to be able to do it. So what I did, I came up with this exercise based on something I learned from a great jazz drummer, Alan Dawson. So you take a line of stick control, those 13 lines. So after playing, now you're playing quarter notes with, let's say, your right foot. Of course, your feet are involved. You're playing quarter notes with your right foot, eighth notes with your hands, like I said. But after each line, you'll do a single stroke roll, which will be 16ths. It's the next subdivision. So if you end the line with a left hand, like line 1, right, left, you start your roll with your right hand. Now here's the tricky part. You end the line with your right hand, left, right. Now you have to do a roll with your left hand. And it's more natural for me to lead with my right hand because I'm right-handed. Left-handed, while you're playing a right foot, it's just not natural. Your right hand wants to go with your foot. Anyway, to give you an idea what that sounds like, it's like this. So as you notice, when I end, it's 2 measures of the pattern, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 2 measures of roll. Then you land on beat 1, you have 1 measure rest, which is like a 2-4 measure, and then you continue.
Right.
Dude, that exercise, if you're not warmed up and you haven't done it for a while, it'll be like, well, not that slow for me, but it's amazing. You'll be humbled very quickly.
Sure. Hey, so when you are doing this, like before a gig, you do this warm-up routine. Are you going at it at a pretty high tempo to start with, or do you start slow and speed up, or you just go for it?
I try to go at max tempo without being tight, where as long as it's flowing.
Right, still even.
But if I'm doing it 3 times a day or even twice a day, it's there.
Right.
So I can walk up and just go, And by the way, I do it in my hotel room if I have a pad, but if I don't, because I'll get the phone, the text, Kenny at 4 a.m, is that you practicing? I'll go, yes, I'm right underneath you. In the hotel room. It's the guys in the band.
Sure.
So I can, if I have to, I can do it on my leg. Like, watch this. All the pattern, everything.
Sure.
All right. The last component, because there's all kinds of other things. By the way, I noticed, talk about functioning, practicing. I had this drum solos. John Fogerty wanted me to do this drum solo in the show. And I started doing these, I was doing like 16th notes on the kick drum, like, and I played 6s on top of it, right? It's a really cool thing. And I noticed, and I was holding it, and I remember when I added that one night to my drum solo out of the blue, I went, oh my God, I think you better start practicing this, because my head wanted me to do it over and over and over and over again, but I was tiring out. So what I did was this exercise I just showed you with the single stroke roll, I'd already been doing that. I added, the next component was to do the roll twice as long for 4 measures.
Okay.
So you go like, and that, now you're getting endurance. Once again, functional. All right, the next component is, and then we'll stop, is the double bass drum. So because I don't use it that often, but when I do use it, I want to be able to do it, which is, So I functional practicing. So what are the most obvious beats that you play when you do the double bass drum? 8th notes on the ride cymbal, 2 and 4 on the snare drum. And then eighth notes on. This is all eighth notes on the ride cymbal. You can do all this with quarter notes, of course.
Sure.
Come up with different cymbal patterns. But the most obvious is eighth notes accented. Hope I'm not blowing you out because I got the mic on. Okay. So the different patterns I came up with was like 2 and 4 on the snare, or 4 on the snare. And then, this is the hardest one for me, eighth notes on the snare. Because what's happening is when you're doing the single stroke roll, your right foot, your right hand, your left hand are all playing eighth notes, dot, 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 dot. But your left foot, all by itself, is playing on all the E's and U's. So 3/4 of you are doing one thing, and that one foot is off on its own. And it really doesn't like to be alone. It wants to be with the other hands and the feet. So it's just, and then the next patterns I do like kind of like offbeat, like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Because, you know, that, you know, double time thing. And then finally, to make it a little bit more interesting, I added, I guess you could call it 3 against 2. Oh, no. It's like every 3 16th notes, or the dotted eighth. So it'd be easier to explain. The reason why I added that is because every accent, the first accent's with the right foot, the second accent's with the left foot, and the third accent, it makes you be comfortable putting your hand with any foot.
Right.
So I'll play just a little bit of it at the right volume. Okay, let me add, I'll do 10 measures of one, then switch to the next. And then I'll do the whole thing again, 10 measures. And then I'll do the whole thing again, 10 measures. So you're doing 30 measures. Or is it measures? 1, 2, yep, 30 measures of each thing. But I like to switch it. Once again, when you play the drums, you're always changing from one thing to the next. You know, there's the verse beat, then there's a chorus beat, then there's the verse beat, then there's the intro beat, then there's the bridge beat, then there's the solo beat. So it's very important to be able to move, flow between different grooves. Once again, that's under the title of getting the most value out of your practice routine, which I call it functional practicing.
Sure.
So that's basically, those are the main things. There's a whole bunch of other stuff I do, but I designed the 30-minute routine for me.
Well, I think from what I could tell there through this routine, you get, not only do you get your practicing and warming up, but you're also practicing a lot of independence. You know, you're teaching your body how to be independent of the limbs, to be independent from each other. And then when they do hit with each other, they're supposed to hit at the same time. So you're getting a lot of value out of not just warming up. So you're getting a lot more than that as well.
Actually, you nailed it.
Yeah.
That's exactly the whole purpose, to get as much value as possible.
So after all of these years, you've been playing drums for how many years?
Oh, my God. Well, the first time I picked up a pair of sticks to now would be 57 years. So that's kind of hard because I'm only 26.
That's right.
But somehow...
But after that much time and all the gigs you've done, the records you've made, do you still find your left hand, your weak side, you still have to work on it, even after all this time?
Yeah, my left hand, well, dude, I'll be honest with you.
I find that typical for pretty much any drummer. I mean,
here's the thing, and I know you can relate to this, is that our brains, especially first of all, you're always trying to be better than you are. You know, I have this line that goes like this: I'll never be as great as I want to be, but I'm willing to spend the rest of my life trying to be as great as I can be. Just like a running back in football. They don't get touchdowns every time. They spend their whole life trying to get in the end zone. So I'm always trying to be as good as my best day, and you remember those. Mm-hmm. Oh, man, that was like perfect. But you're human, so you're not going to be perfect for whatever reason. So you're always trying to be as good as you have been, but then you're also trying to be better than you've ever been by practicing to, you're inspired by somebody. So I am humbled by having to always work hard to be as good as I can be, as the best Kenny Aronoff I can be, and try to, learn some new things occasionally. I'm so busy. I built the big Kenny Aronoff brand, so I can't practice the 8 hours a day I did when I was just living in a band house. And it was a different time. So, so that is the left hand for sure, but everything,
Sure.
Like one thing this pandemic has done is made my session playing here, in some ways I've brought it to the highest level because, look, in the old days, when there were big budgets, for the people who don't realize what those days were like, I had drums in Nashville, 2 sets in Nashville, 2 sets in L.A., 2 sets in New York, a ton in Indiana where I lived, set in Germany, set in Japan. People would fly me all over the world to record even just one song. And I'd show up in the crews, they'd set my gear up. I would walk in, because I'd be getting off a plane. I mean, I was on tour with Michelle Branch once. Here's the epitome, and also the changing of the budgets.
Sure.
I flew after a show I did with Michelle Branch in Philly, took a 7:30 a.m. flight, flew to L.A., landed at 10:30. I was at Henson, recorded 13 songs in one day. Every note I'd written out, 8 Alanis Morissette songs, 1 Melissa Etheridge song, 1 song that was going to be for Gwen Stefani, 1 song for Goo Goo Dolls, 2 songs for Anastasia, and maybe I'm forgetting, but it came out to 13 songs. And then got on a plane, took the red eye, landed in New York, and did a 5:30 a.m. Oh, no, I went right to the TV show, like Kelly and Regis or somebody.
Right.
The point is, I didn't have time to practice those songs. I just wrote every note out. I'm really very particular. I wrote every single note out so I could just walk in and start recording. But now, because I'm not on tour, and when I get these songs, it used to be I'd be on tour like before the pandemic, and someone said, "Man, how much it costs to record a song or 2 songs?" And I tell them and say, "Okay, I can do it on this date when I come back from being on the road," and I'd stack 8, 10 songs from different artists, and I'd do it. But I didn't have time to practice, or maybe in my hotel room a little bit, but basically I'd be doing it by reading. But now, because I have a little bit more time, I've been able to practice these songs a day before or 2 days before, so that when I record, 3 takes, I'm done.
Yeah, you just
and
go
I
for
give
it.
all 3 takes. And also, I'm not learning it. It's like I've already been playing these songs, and it starts at a higher level. Everything from sound, groove, ideas. Because when I record a track for somebody, I give them pretty much note by note what they sent me on the demo. Then the next take, I expand on that, embellish it, and then the third take, I add a little bit more Kenny Aronoff, and so they can just choose what they want.
Right. No, that's awesome. Really cool stuff, man. I love how you've adapted yourself to all of these things. It's really cool.
Yeah, well, you keep your eyes and ears open, but I'd say the North Star, and I know you can relate to this, is you're aware of where you are, where you've been, and where you want to go.
You bet.
And so you just, RPS, you figure out what you need to do to get to where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very least, stay at the top of your game where you are.
You bet. Well, cool, man. I love everything you're talking about. Before we finish off this very cool hang today, let's talk about gear. You've been playing Tama for your whole career, really. You've been with Tama quite a long time. You're sitting behind a really gorgeous green kit. It's not a sparkle. It looks sort of like swirl finish.
It is sparkle.
Wow, on the TV here, it has a really cool swirly finish to it. It looks great. So anything new going on with your gear these days, your drum gear?
Yeah. So I've been with Tama for 40 years, starting next year.
40 years. Cool.
Which is, it's pretty rare because a lot of people switch companies. And, listen, if you can't make a good drum at this point
right.
in the technology,
right.
you shouldn't be making drums. It's not a secret. There's a way to make a great drum. So all the companies make great drums. Tama, I went with them originally because they were so cool with well, first of all, their gear was impeccable. Hardware was impeccable. And they were a young, family-owned, aggressive, serious company. And people like Billy Cobham, were playing the drums. A lot of my heroes, Liberty DeVito for Billy Joel. I'm trying to think who else. Lenny White was playing them. Some jazz drum. I don't know if it was Elvin Jones. No, Elvin was probably Gretsch. Anyway, it was a lot of my heroes were playing the drums, and I kept hearing, and it was actually in Fort Wayne, Neil, who owned, he created the XL percussion, case line.
Okay.
And he, in Fort Wayne, he owned a drum shop up there, and he said, because other companies were coming after me, he said, and I was saying, what do you, it's Tama or this or that, and he said, I would go with Tama because anywhere you go in the world, you're going to find their product in the stores. They're very supportive. Everything they make is impeccable, perfect. And, and Neil Peart played Tama too.
Sure.
And so I went, all right. And I was blown away by the drums. And so basically, Tama makes the drums that sound great for the type of personality, the type of sound I like. Aggressive, in your face. They go after. So other drum companies make things that might be a little bit warmer. Tama makes their sound goes with my personality. So that's that. As far as new product, okay, so I have some signature snare drums. I have the 5x14, which I have right here, which is hand engraved.
Yeah.
And then I have a 6.5x14, which is like the John Bonham, hand engraved. And I had a 4x15. It was modeled after an old 1920s Ludwig drum. Incredible. 8 lug. But you take that drum and tune it down, put some muffling on like a piece of paper on it, and you got the fattest snare drum in the world. They don't make that anymore. And my favorite heads, I'm just blown away. Everybody I tell to do this, put a die cast on your top of your snare drum, the top hoop, get a Evans heavyweight drum head. Something about that drum head brings low frequencies. You still have your highs, but across the board, I have friends that go like, oh my God. I said, that's exactly what the engineers told me live and in the studio. They went, what did you do to your drum? I went, uh-oh, something wrong? I said, no, it's way better. It's like got all this spectrum of sound. And people, they've played me recordings of their drum before the die-cast loop and before this heavyweight on top. And by the way, hazy 300 Evans on the bottom.
Okay.
I used a 24-strand pure sound snares. Dude, when I tell people to do that, they would send me what they had and what they have, and it sounds like two different drums.
That's awesome.
So anyway, I'm sharing my secrets.
Well, we have one of your signature snares in our recording studios here, and I've used it countless times on sessions.
Oh, cool.
And it's a fantastic sounding snare drum. So I know from experience how good that snare drum is.
Put that, you know what I modeled after is the Ludwig Superphonic 400.
Sure.
Pre-62, which had more brass in it. And Tama blew it out of the water because I'd come to the session. I was known for bringing 100 snare drums. You don't need 100.
Right.
But I brought it because you never know. But I was bringing all my Ludwig vintage, 1962, 5x14 and 6.5x14, and they kept going, what's that drum you have up now? And it was mine. Tama literally improved what I loved.
That's great
Pretty
stuff.
amazing.
Really cool.
I'm really excited. That's going to be a 6x14 because I don't have a 6x14.
Right.
So I'm excited.
Well, we'll look forward to that for sure.
And I've played Zildjian my entire life. I played Vic Firth my entire life. Vic Firth, I studied timpani with Vic when I had long hair and I was much younger.
Sure.
And eventually I got it. It took me 4 years of auditioning for Vic to get into the #1 student orchestra in America, if not the world, at Tanglewood, run by the Boston Symphony Orchestra. They only take 7 percussionists in the whole world. And I struck out 3 years in a row, and I went back for a 4th. Talk about perseverance and RPS. There it is, man. I just kept trying and trying and trying, and finally Vic went, "You're ready," and boy, do you really want this? And I got in.
So, really, a quick question about that. The technique you learned from a legend like Vic Firth, playing an instrument like timpani and those kinds of things, more classical instruments, did that help your rock and roll drumming? I mean,
killer question. For years, I thought, oh my God, what was I thinking? I did all this classical. I did 1 year at UMass, 4 years at the #1 school of music in the country with classical, which is in Bloomington, Indiana. A really tough school to get into, but get in, tougher to stay in. I had a teacher that, I walked in the first lesson without a pencil for some reason. He threw me out of the room and gave me an F.
Oh, gosh.
Don't you ever show up. Think about it. Let's fast forward, 5 years later, and I'm at Tanglewood, and I'm working with Leonard Bernstein. If he has something to tell you, Leonard Bernstein with a 90-piece orchestra, that's 90 people. If he tells you to do something, he says, okay, show me, you better get it right. He does not have time to deal with your inadequacies. He's got 89 other people there. And you got 3 pieces to work through in 2.5 hours. Dude, you write it down. He says something, you write it down. I'll give you a funny story in rock and roll. I was doing a Meatloaf record in New York, Bat Out of Hell 3. And I played on Bat Out of Hell 2. It sold over 40 million copies. Big hit was I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that. So the Meatloaf songs are long and these huge, long, epic songs. So I've got like 3 pages of like a million notes. The famous engineer producer goes, Kenny, what are you doing out there? You writing a letter to your mom? I looked up and I says, Ron, when I'm done writing my letter to my mom, I'm going to be able to give you one complete take without stopping from top to bottom, which I did because I can read music. Hence, that's what I learned from Vic Firth, reading music.
Yeah.
Then if he goes, well, that's great, man, but in the third chorus, could you do this? And in the bridge, could you do this? And in the blah, 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 blah. I go, sure. Okay, go again. Wow, that's great. You know what? I was wrong about that idea. Do this. And in the intro, could you add just a different fill? No problem. Bam. Wow. Okay, let's go. Wow, we've done 6 songs today.
There you go.
Some of the stuff I learned from Vic Firth. Massive discipline, perfection. If you were playing a timpani piece and you make a mistake, he's very nice. Say, play it. No, it's like this. Do that. You get one more chance. If you don't get it, you're done with that piece. And you move on to the next one.
Okay.
Do it next week. You had no time. He was training you to be as good as you can possibly be all the time. And I was so in fear of the lessons and also so into wanting to do a great job with him because he was the nicest guy in the world. I wanted to please him. I would practice timpani 5 hours a day.
Wow.
In the summer when I was studying with him. Over and over. Precision. One of his big things, Nick, was like he was really good at knowing how to divide on the spot between 16ths and triplets. And then all the different rhythmic combinations within those things. And he had impeccable time and precision like a machine, but with feel too.
Sure.
And so I learned in that whole classical world massive discipline and conductors yelling at you. There was no hand holding. There was no coddling. No, not everybody gets a trophy. If you want a trophy, you want to win the Super Bowl, you work your ass off, and you might not get the trophy. But not everybody walks away with trophy. And I don't believe in that anyway. I believe you work for your achievements because the message you send to people that everybody is equal in winning is sending the wrong message. That's saying you don't have to work to be great. You have to work to be great, and some people are born more talented than others. I could list off, 50 drummers. Let's go with one, Thomas Lang. I mean, come on. Thomas Lang is born with unbelievable talent and technical ability. But then he worked his ass off more than the average person. That's why he's Thomas Lang. That's why. He didn't just say, well, I deserve to get that gig because, why should he get it? He worked hard for it. He worked for it. Listen, I worked hard to get into Tanglewood. I got rejected 3 times. I didn't go, well, why shouldn't I get the gig? Because you're not good enough. You're not ready yet. And even if you are ready, Vic Firth is the one who picks you. If he doesn't want you, he doesn't want you. That's just the way it goes.
Right.
That teaches you to work hard, to become as great as you can be at whatever you do in life. That's it.
Dude, that's just awesome stuff. Thanks so much. I think we should just end it there because that just says it all, right? That just encapsulates the whole thing. Kenny, thanks so much, man. Thanks for hanging out with me today. This has been very insightful. I dig just how you go about things. It's really cool, and just thanks so much for taking the time.
Absolutely, Nick. Always good seeing you, and stay warm.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I gotta go like quadruple layer before I go home.
Quadruple. Oh my God.
Thanks so much, man.
All
Have
right,
a great day.
All right,
Thanks, everybody.
care.
Thank you.